I'm Gold Derby News and Features Editor Ray Richmond, and I'm welcoming three-time Oscar nominee Mark Stoeckinger, supervising sound editor on the Lionsgate release John Wick Chapter 4, to our Film Sound Meet the Experts panel. Mark, you've been working on the John Wick film since the first one in 2014. What did you do differently sound-wise in number 4 than you had in the previous three? Is there an evolution to the sound over the course of nearly a decade?
Well, I would say there's two levels of evolution, really. There's always learning how to make things better and try new things to make it sound more interesting. That's one. We can always dive into the details of that. But there's also the world of John Wick has evolved over the course of 4 films, and it becomes more intricate as time goes on. We peel back more layers of that onion and just kind of reveal more of the space and sort of the global size of the John Wick universe. And so then it gives you a lot of different locations and a lot of different opportunities to try different things in different soundscapes.
Where did you acquire your gunshot sounds for this film, Mark? Is it field recordings of real guns being fired?
There's a lot of field recordings of real guns being fired. But truth be told, as much as always looking to record as much as humanly possible on every film, this last one, there were no specific guns recorded, just because over the course of time and over the course of 4 John Wicks, as all the sound professionals here will know, is that you layer in certain ways. You pick different frequencies that you want to accentuate, and you set it up so when you go to the mix, you can change it with EQ and compression and reverb and panning, and just give a lot of variety to it. So you've really chosen thing. Each film has a whole different palette of sounds you might choose for each individual gunshot. It's all made up. None of it's the real gun. Ultimately, like there's
Thankfully.
yeah, hopefully. Well, like even in this, there's a shotgun they call the Dragon's Breath, and so listen to what it sounds like on YouTube, and it doesn't even sound like a good shotgun, let alone like anything you'd want to use in a movie. So the whole idea was like really amp it up, make it interesting, maybe even sneak the sound of a dragon in there if you're so interested. Hint, hint. But those are the sort of things that evolve over the course of a John Wick series. But ultimately, the series is known for the guns and the cars and the fights and all that. But honestly, I think what has been always the most rewarding part of it throughout 4 films, and particularly in 4, are all the non-literal sounds, all the subtext sounds that really make up those different universes. Usually you would think that the first note would be, let's have a bigger gun. But this, Chad, his first note on 4 was, we shot this during COVID in places that we would never have access to. They're visually just really rich and detailed, and let's figure out ways to make them sound that way. So, we lean on reverb spaces, different reverb spaces, put different sounds in to kind of excite that, and then build an offstage world. And that tends to be the fun. And we were all over the world in John Wick 4. And, it gives us an opportunity too, when you build the offstage world, as sound folks know, is that you can use a real sound in a subjective way by just making it a little bit different, a little bit weird, a little bit commenting on the action. And there's a lot of opportunities for that in these movies. So as much as there's a lot of guns and a lot of fights, and cars in this one too, there's a lot of those opportunities. And that's sort of the most fun to talk about.
I love the way your bullet ricochets sound, though. Specifically, I was careful to listen to them closely because I knew I'd be talking to you, and I noticed you never use the same precise ping of sound twice.
Well, the opportunity is that's really the different note, right? I mean, the guns are a gun, and yeah, they'll sound different in whatever environment, or how, like I said, the EQ, compression and reverb and the rest. But it's the actual bullet hits themselves that sometimes are the instrument. And a lot of times Chad will cut the movie, orchestrate the movie, so that is part of how it plays. He'll have something that's musical, and then you trade off to something that is bullet impact related that keeps the beat, or something like that, and back and forth. I mean, not as clearly obvious as some other films have done as a conceit, but this one has a lot of that going on. The bullet hits are a lot of fun.
Chad being your director, Chad
Chad is the director,
Stahelski.
right? He's directed all
Yeah,
4
yeah.
of them. So
And how involved was he in the way everything sounded, including the doing of the arrows that are shot too?
Well, he's really involved because there's certain aspects of it that he really wants to tell the story of. I mean, these guys, well, Wick and the blue suits, as we call them, they have bulletproof suits, which I found out actually really exist. But nonetheless, make it so you can tell who it is in the midst of a melee of a gunfight. You know, who's deflecting bullets and who's not. So there's a lot of that.
I want one of those bulletproof suits. Where do you
I
get
know.
those?
Well, rumor has it that there's high officials in our government that wear these bulletproof suits. Just now, we are all in the know.
Aha.
But
I remember the bulletproof vest, but not the suits.
right, well, I think technically they're resistant, but we'll play
Right.
in the drama of it a little bit.
The hand-to-hand fights here, Mark, sound incredibly authentic too. Even when the characters are using knives and axes and swords, did you do specific recording sessions for those too?
I have done in the past, but they weren't really specifically drawn. Those are drawn on for this particular film. So the whole idea in the fights were to keep it not cartoony, try not to cross that line. Hopefully that comes across that way, because there's that big fight scene in the club where the whole idea was to cross the line and make it sort of an homage to how we set the whole movie up with the big I forget what you call it, katana, the big, the rope covered pole that he hits that are huge. Where Chad said, let's make it really quiet and then shock the audience out of their slumber, which is pretty much the case. So when he finally gets to the point of the movie where it can be out of control, we actually stole and used those exact sounds. So it ties into that story-wise.
You had to have some sonic challenges for that, though. I mean, the fight, like you're saying, they're so cool and elaborate, and you put those pretty much front and center in the film. Were there a lot of challenges in getting the sounds just right for that?
There were a lot of challenges because it's full frequency, but the ultimate frequency you really want is the low frequency. You want it to be huge, but obviously it's got to be respectful to the sound systems they're going to play on. So it kind of took a while to find the combinations that work and what doesn't overcook it, because as we all know, it's easy to overcook sound like that. So virtually there's only one higher frequency sound that could be considered literal. Everything else are what sound people tend to think of as sound design. They're non-literal sounds that kind of create, the feeling or the emotion of whatever you're trying to achieve. But yeah, it took a while to find that actual blend. Even though they might not have sounded very different from the very beginning to the very end, there was just a feel that was achieved with Chad. And there's not too many sounds he leans in on. That was one of them because it was important. It's how the film starts. But we were able to get there with him.
Lots of breaking glass and crawling on glass sounds too. You obviously had to work pretty closely with the VFX team.
We did, because a lot of that wasn't there. And, we have a blind assassin. So sound obviously plays into how that works to be able to have all these sound cues. One thing that's nice about all the John Wick scripts and how Chad writes them in particular is he writes in, there's not a lot of dialogue in these movies. Let's be honest. But so he writes in very descriptive sounds in the script. So when they shoot the film, we know from reading the script, and was fortunate enough to see the dailies as they went, to see how it's going to go, what direction it's going to take, and how granular they're going to get, literally with an hourglass maybe, but ultimately just with the sort of visuals that they're going to focus on and what sound can do for those. And he likes that, so we can start getting the wheels turning of what we might want to do.
I was going to say, though, that had to be a challenge to have so little dialogue, as you just mentioned. Keanu Reeves doesn't say a whole lot, a lot of breaths and grunts, and
Right.
the ding dong doorbell sensors. But otherwise,
Yeah,
he's a man of few words.
Yeah. Well, as he's always said, there's something about the fact that he is not doing much acting that you can actually counterpoint everyone around him doing that to fill in the gaps. Not maybe accidental gaps, intentional gaps, but so that gives a lot of opportunity for sound to play as well when that's happening. So you notice John walks a lot. There's a lot of footsteps in this movie, which help create that space that Chad wanted to create when they're walking across the Louvre. That was amazing. So
Yeah.
how did you do that? He goes, COVID. It was closed. So
Well, we're going to wrap things there. Mark Stoeckinger, good luck to you this coming awards season. John Wick Chapter 4, starring Keanu Reeves, is currently available to stream on multiple platforms. And thanks for joining us today at Gold Derby.
great. Thanks very much.